It looks like the next big box for Kill Team is going to go up on pre-order this weekend. And I thought I might just take a minute to discuss the rules previews that we've had for Shadowhunt, as well as what those previews might mean for the general power level of the game. At one of the Kill Team tournaments I attended a little while ago, I got into a discussion about the general power level of teams and stuff like that. And Declan, one of the tournament organisers in the Yorkshire scene, said the more words that are on a data card, the better it is. So when this news article for the Incidiants dropped, and I read every Kill Team gets a special ability, and some even get 2, but the Incidiants are so good they get 3. I did sigh internally a little bit. More words, more better. But it isn't quite that simple. It isn't just 3 flat benefits. There's a bit of a cost involved with their army rules, so let's get into it. Basically, these guys get 3 rules. The first rule is called Inspiration, and basically a sister of battle who charges an enemy operative with 6 wounds or more, which is most models in the game. They get the Inspiring buff, and one of the benefits of this is gaining severe on their own weapons, allowing them to hit enemies better, right? The next part of this sort of chained army rule is Martyrdom, and essentially whenever a sister of battle dies with this Inspiring trait active, a sister who witnessed their martyrdom, their death, within 6 inches gains a benediction, which is the third part of the army rule, I suppose. And that breaks down into 4 buffs, essentially. They can get Ardor, Wrath, Restoration, and Exigence. Ardor is an APL buff, always really powerful. And the cool thing is, unlike Mandrake, say, this isn't locked behind a single operative, so any of the Inspiring Sisters can give this out when they die. Wrath, which is ceaseless, which could be huge if you consider, we haven't really seen all of the data cards, and we've got like sisters running around with sword and board and big maces and stuff like that. Restoration, which is D3 plus 2 healing, pretty good, especially if the sisters don't have access to a normal medic. We'll see how it pans out, but if they also have access to other ways to heal, this could be a very tanky team. And then Exigence, which is basically a small 3-inch charge or dash. Immediately, I'm thinking about the application of these benedictions and how it could really skyrocket a data card in general. If we think of the previous Sisters of Battlekill team, they had the Eviscerator, which was like a 2-handed chainsword, essentially. Now, I mean, if we've got equivalent power weapons within the team, which models-wise, it looks like we're going to get those kinds of things, being able to drop Ceaseless on those kind of power weapons in melee could be huge. And furthermore, we already know that they're going to have access to Melter Pistols. So access to Melter Pistols combined with lots of interest in melee weapons, combined with the possibility of throwing out a Ceaseless buff, does seem sort of explosively powerful in the right circumstances. However, having an action economy that requires your own sisters to die will probably be less effective than previous resource-based systems. So that's something, I guess. We were also given the data card for the Incidient Mortar Sanctus. Now, these names are absolutely out of control. Excuse me if I get them wrong. But I think if she's a representative of the general health pool of the team, 9 wounds is a very nice breakpoint to be at for close combat, and it will pair very well with any kinds of damage reduction, whether that's damage reduction on a data card, so we know already that there's going to be a sister with a shield, so if she's reducing incoming damage, combined with a 9 wound breakpoint and the possibility to heal through the benedictions, it looks like we could see some very interesting dynamics throughout the game. But generally speaking, I think we'll need to see what the wider access to healing and ignoring damage through things like stratagems will be before we can make a real sort of concrete definition on how cracked they might be. However, every other faith faction in the game has either been cracked or uninteractive to play against. So if we look at, for example, novitiates, they had like the most uninteractive stratagem in the game, which was just, I think it was called Blinding Aura, which was just like a no, you can't shoot me button. And obviously the Sanctifiers also came in hot with, way too much damage reduction, way too many sort of stacking buffs and stuff like that. So I am a little bit apprehensive, shall we say, about the Benediction's sort of army rule and how that might stack with data cards. We will see how it pans out, I suppose. But given the track record of previous releases in this season of Kill Team, I do think that the Sisters of Battle will be the more difficult the more difficult of the two teams to play, purely because they've got a sort of resource heavy army rule in regards to, their models have to die. And obviously the other team is a marine equivalent team, which generally have a simpler and more approachable design space to fill. I would like to say Match Made in Heaven is the Incidiants and the Martyr secondary objective. Come on, that's like so thematic. I can't wait to see, nuns with guns running around martyring themselves on secondary objectives, And then obviously that brings us on to the Murderwing. These guys look super strong anyway. I mean, we know it's an elite kill team already. We know that it's got a melter gun. And now we know, obviously, through the jump pack rule, that they're going to be ignoring a primary mechanic of the game, which is inherently strong, but at least they will not be able to stage up to the corner of a T-section. So I'm not going to bore you with the details of this wall of text that is the jump back rule, but when making a charge, fall back, or reposition action, the Marines can kind of choose to fly as long as they don't have vantage above them. So they can't, unlike Vespids, they can't fly indoors. They have to like boost up into the air and come down, if you imagine it like that. Obviously, the big gimmick for these guys is going to be non-reciprocal charges. And I do think it's going to be a pretty rough ride for elite kill teams against these guys, because it's going to be so easy for them to set up those non-reciprocal plays, set up a charge but you can't charge them back, things like that. So we also got one of the stratagems previewed today as well. That's Blade Fins, basically D3 plus 1 damage as they move through people. It's fairly situational in a vacuum, especially given a base movement of 6. So basically we know these guys only move 6 inches, whether they can fly or not. And through playing Vespids, we do know how limiting that can be. I mean, think about it, often charges that we can make are on the very limits of a mini's movement. And that is inherent to a game where we're trying to flank and gauge each other's threat ranges and stuff like that. So I don't think it's really going to see play like the diagram here. I think it more see play in a sort of a way of skewing breakpoints, if you understand what I mean. So it looks up to now like these guys don't have a heal on the team, which is a good sign for an elite kill team, because it's often the heals that create the problematic longevity for a team, and this might be one way for them to mitigate that lack of healing by obviously being able to mess with breakpoints, doing a little bit of damage beforehand. We were also previewed with the Murderwing Curse Claw, which is the kind of cool Raptor-esque mutated guy. He does have a pretty standard assault intercessor body, it looks like. However, it does have the snatch special rule. I do think the snatch will slap. Generally speaking, moving an enemy model in any way is usually quite powerful. It allows you to do things like mess with the APL weightings on a point, for example, and things like that. And again, I think this will be strong against elite teams. Fight on Death, likewise, will probably also be strong against elite teams, but obviously it's probably only this model that will have Fight on Death on its data card. So this is all under the shadow of Senor del Chaos still not getting his time in the sun. There's going to be a Chaos Lord in this kill team, I believe. If he is like the equivalent of the Angels of Death captain, for example, with a freaking jump pack, that's going to be pretty wild as well. And that is one big sort of queen chess piece, if you know what I mean. It's going to be a powerful piece. Again, especially against other elite kill teams. So overall, I reckon I'm going to give the Incidiants a 6 out of 10 on the cracked scale. I think that having a resource that relies on your own minis dying will certainly curb their overall power levels somewhat, and will definitely make them more difficult to play than obviously the sister team that comes in the box, the Murderwing. And I'm also going to give the Murderwing a 9 out of 10 purely because of the meta that they're coming into. All these things that I'm looking at, Snatch, the fact that they're going to have a Flying Melter, the fact that they're going to have a Chaos Lord, the jump pack, these things in sort of conjunction with the fact that they're coming into a very elite heavy meta game at the moment means that they're going to be they're going to be mean, I think, on release. Do you have any opinions on how broken or not broken these guys are going to be? Please let me know in the comments below.